listeners to the very first episode of The Queer Cut, a space for the truths we carry, the ones we whisper to ourselves, the ones we have to fight to name. This podcast is all about getting into the nitty-gritty of being queer in Gen Z. I'm your host, Ella, and today's episode is going to be a bit of an introduction, a beginning, and a laying down of roots. This is my story, the first of many that will be featured in this project. I was born in the U.S. to immigrant parents in the Philippines, first-generation Filipino-American bisexual. That sentence alone holds multitudes. It holds oceans crossed, languages lost and found, traditions tangled with survival. It holds the quiet negotiations between who I am and who I was expected to be. Growing up, I had learned the art of code switching before I even knew the word for it. For those of you who don't know, code switching is a practice of shifting the way we speak, behave, or present ourselves depending on the social context we're in, often to navigate power, safety, or belonging. For many of us who live at the intersection of cultures, identities, and expectations, this isn't just some skill, but a way of life. Consistently having to shift and juggle between the Ella I present to everyone is quite the taxing job, as one can imagine. I grew up having to decide and distinguish which parts of myself I will embrace or disregard when I make the switch. Nowadays, I don't really have to make these decisions anymore because of the last year. I've been living in a lot more authentically myself, but this is a luxury not everyone can afford. I first realized that I wasn't straight in middle school. It was such an awkward time for me learning how to navigate my puberty-ridden body while also trying to figure out the new and strange feelings that were clawing at my 13-year-old self. I knew I liked boys just like many young girls my age, but I began to share those same feelings towards other girls. I'll refer to my first girl crush as A. To me, she was so cool and unafraid of being authentically herself, which is something I was definitely struggling with. At first, I was more worried about people discovering I was emo and into anime than my sexuality since I wasn't entirely sure what I was feeling. But A, for her, none of that mattered. She wore black skinny ripped jeans and band t-shirts all the time. I remember thinking no one could rock a side part in a beanie like her. Funny enough, she brought me out of the emo closet before the LGBTQ plus one. I so desperately wanted her to like me and to be my friend that I thought all these feelings I had towards her were just some internal need to gain her friendship. I begged my mom to take me to Hot Topic so I could wear clothes just like her and show off all my weird kid interests. Over time, we did in fact become really close friends, and she taught me about the LGBTQ plus community and came out to me as a lesbian. This completely rocked my world. I mean, it basically opened up a world of possibilities and in turn also gave me a new set of problems. Now that I knew what I was feeling was normal, it meant my feelings were real. I think at this point, I was becoming conscious of where my parents stood politically as well. I will preface by saying I love my parents, and they were simply unaware of how I was feeling at this time in my life, and that they are very supportive of me when I eventually did come out. That being said, they did not make it easy for me to do so. When all the stars were aligning and I realized I was bisexual, naturally, I thought my next step was to come out and all would be rainbows and butterflies. Surely my parents spent much time putting love and care into their kids could just accept me as I am. Surely who I chose to love wouldn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Surely this would be like ripping off a bandage. No. Oh, how naive I was. My dad was very conservative on top of that. He was also blatantly homophobic. And my mom was very much rocking with the gays so long as her kids weren't one of them. I remember so many occasions of wanting to speak up for myself and shout back at their hateful words, claiming the people they spoke so ill of included me. Like many people, this is so much easier said than done. This put a huge damper on my plans, and it honestly pushed me so deep into the closet, I wouldn't come out until 7 years later at the right age of 20 and a half. Back to the situation at hand with A, I knew I liked her, but I wasn't out yet. One of my closest friends at the time even joked saying that I was gay, and I lashed out at her, insisting that it wasn't true, and sent myself into a spiral. My bad, homegirl. I was so worried about being found out, living in fear of my parents and what might happen if they learned this secret of mine. I mean, if my friends were joking that I was so obviously gay, then my parents wouldn't be too far behind them in thinking the same. Hence to the code switching, dividing myself in how I presented in fear of being caught, in fear of rejection. I so desperately wanted nothing more than for my parents to be proud of me. I couldn't afford to slip up, but I really did like this girl. It put me at a crossroads of what to do. I got the inkling that my feelings were reciprocated and went out on a whim and decided to come out to one of my childhood friends. I figured if I told someone about how I felt about A, and someone in the world knew who I really was besides myself, telling A that I liked her wouldn't be so daunting. We can call my friend O. Now, I want to gently remind my viewers that I, like all people I speak about right now, were very pretty young at this age, and I hold no malice towards them because we were just kids who didn't know any better. In hindsight, Maybe I shouldn't have come out to my friend who I knew was raised strictly Catholic, and I probably shouldn't have done it right after our CCD class in the Catholic school just to the right of our local church. Not exactly the prime location for my first coming out experience, but she was my most long-term friend at the time. Oh, to put it lightly, didn't react well. She walked away from me with a look of shock mixed with disgust, followed by her not speaking to me for a week. This shook me to my core because rejection of my sexuality was no longer an if, it was becoming a matter of when. At this point, A had turned from my number one desire to my number one op. In her defense, she wasn't doing anything wrong. I mean, to her, I was just the girl she got to listen to Andy Biersack with, but to me, she had led me down such an awful path of denying my truth to the people around me. That being said, anytime she whipped out her earbuds for us to listen to music in between classes and to shuffle the halls awkwardly close, that offer was never denied. Oh, after the week had taken its course of side glances and avoiding talking to each other, did come back around and we started talking again. I didn't radicalize O by any means. I think she was wary of my sexuality, wasn't sure how to handle it, but our friendship came first, which was my beacon of light. This reassured me that hopefully down the line more people would be like her. With that weight being semi-lifted off my shoulders, I was starting to think maybe I could come out to other people. The truth of my sexuality slowly trickled throughout my friend group, and I was beginning to feel comfortable with who I was again, at least at school. At home, I was still quiet. I didn't dare say or do anything that would give me away. If my parents said something I didn't agree with, it was just crickets from me. I just know a lot of internal hate was blossoming from their words. I feel bad for saying this now, but I can't even really tell you how A and I got together. I just remember being with her and us being one of the first lesbian relationships of our grade. Dating A was like living in two different worlds. At school, we were that couple, the emo girls who held hands in the hallway and got called things I won't repeat here. Being weird was already my thing, but being weird and gay, that was like painting a target on your back and handing out the arrows. We'd steal moments between classes, quick smiles and longing gazes in science class, sharing one set of earbuds like it was some sacred ritual. But I was terrible at it, I was terrible at being someone's girlfriend, at being out. Every sweet gesture from A felt like a spotlight I wasn't ready for. When my parents asked about school, I'd edit her out completely. This person who was becoming my whole world reduced to silence at the dinner table. The anxiety ate at everything good between us. I'd panic when she'd want to hold my hand in public, make excuses why she couldn't come over, create distance when things felt too real. I was so busy looking over my shoulder for who might see us that I stopped seeing her. When A finally ended things gentle but firm, in that way she had, of being authentic like yourself, I was devastated and, relieved in equal measure. High school became my straight passing era. I dated boys exclusively, each relationship a kind of armor. I wasn't, lying exactly. I did like them. But I was only living half a truth, and that half life followed me all the way to college, where at 20 and a half, I finally found the courage to speak all of myself into existence. I came out to my dad first in the garage. I was wearing my friend's blue tie-dyed hoodie. I hadn't been home in ages. I was just there to get my own clothes. We were sitting next to his truck, and I sat and told him about me, my friends at my inclusive co-ed fraternity. All the years of pent-up lies and grief and anger washed out onto him. He was a lot more accepting than I had anticipated, all things considered. My mom was next. She cried and said she just knew, and that left a bitter taste in my mouth, but I was glad for her love and acceptance. If I had known how accepting they would have been sooner, maybe the nightmares and pain could have been something cut off and even completely removed from my life. Nevertheless, I am grateful to have been accepted by them. Fast forward to now, and I'm with KT, my girlfriend of almost 2 years. This incredible woman who makes me want to be the fullest version of myself every single day. The plot twist? My parents absolutely adore her, to the point where when I go home, they expect her to walk in with me. The same parents who once made me feel like I had to hide are now asking when she's coming over for dinner, saving her a seat at family gatherings, treating her like she's always belonged. It's wild how love can transform people, how time can soften edges we thought were permanent. KT sees all of me, the code-switching scars, the years of half-truths, the messy journey that brought me here, and somehow makes it all feel worth it. She holds space for both who I was and who I'm becoming. With her, I'm learning that authentic love isn't about perfection. It's about showing up as your whole self and trusting someone else to do the same. I'm grateful for every relationship that has led me here, every heartbreak that has taught me what I needed, and every moment of courage and cowardice alike. But I owe a special thank you to A, that fearless girl in ripped jeans who first showed me what it looked like to be unapologetically yourself. She opened a door I was terrified to walk through, held my hand when I was ready, and let me go when I wasn't. Without her, I might have never found my way to this version of myself, whole, proud, and finally truly home. Thank you all for tuning in to the first episode of The Queer Cut. Whether you're out, questioning, loud, quiet, or somewhere in between, this space is for you. This is Ella, logging off before I keep talking too much. See you next time!